Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of Masters of Marketing. My name is Tara Levy, and I am your host. And I am thrilled to introduce the fantastic person coming on as our next guest. This is Sasha Martina, who is one of the co-founders of House of Inclusion. She's a speaker and moderator, a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert, and a podcast host and creator in her own right of a podcast called, and do excuse my Dutch translation, pronunciation even, Gek op witte mannen, which I think translates to crazy about white men.
Literally.
Perfect. So, first of all, is there anything you don't do? And secondly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Well, is there anything I don't do? Well, I never been skiing or winter sporting or snowboarding, so that's maybe something from my bucket list. But
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you for that lovely introduction. It's always so nice if somebody else, does the introduction for you. Uh,
Absolutely. And I
so
think to
yeah.
carry that on, I will introduce the House of Inclusion slightly and hand it over to you. So, as far as I understand it, the House of Inclusion, you make businesses a diversity, equity, and inclusion champion slash champions. Tell me more. What does that involve? What do you
That
guys
is
do?
correct. That is correct. So maybe it's good to also take you back very quickly to why we started this whole movement. So I've been mainly working in HR and recruitment, and I always already tried to put my foot down when it came to topics around diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it's not even been that long that we have this terminology for it. So a lot of times people didn't really understand, like, why are you fighting for this person who doesn't even speak our native language? But yeah, on paper they have a pretty good CV, but a lot of times people from the hiring team saw all the reasons not to, interview somebody instead of looking at the opportunities that it could bring to their team. So for me, back in the days as a recruiter, it felt very logical to also fight for it. And I
Mm-hmm.
found out later that's also because I'm a minority myself. I'm a woman in tech, woman of color, woman entrepreneur. So there's so many boxes I also
Yeah.
myself tick as a minority. And therefore, I always felt the need to be a big activist for the people whose voice is less represented in a lot of rooms. And Dani, my co-founder, she also worked a little bit in the field, but more on the entertainment side. So she used to run a drag queen agency, which is extremely cool. At least I'm a huge
That
fan of
is,
drag queens.
that is, I never knew that about Daddy. That is so cool. I would have
It
loved to
is.
have worked there. I think that would have been awesome.
It is, and both of the companies that we used to run before still exist. But we also saw that a lot of companies are struggling with these topics, like after the Me Too movement, after Black Lives Matter, but
Mm-hmm.
also with the political climate being very uncertain around the globe. Um, how do you navigate that, especially if it's
Yeah.
not your daily bread and butter? So the need for more understanding, more guidance already came to us. So people asked us, like, can you help me with this? Can you maybe do a session about that? And based on that, we said, okay, I think it's time to build something bigger than just my voice or your voice, but really build an agency that can be an objective partner to really support these business founders, but also HR leaders and marketing leaders in these topics.
Amazing. And I think it's something that, I mean, obviously the coming onto this podcast is looking at like how you guys, how yourself, but you guys at House of Inclusion, it also overlaps into obviously marketing because like you said, you're coming from a HR background, but it did not go into a, we are a HR company. You know, this, it naturally evolved. So I think let's
Yes.
jump straight in. So why does accessibility in particular matter in marketing and digital marketing?
Well, I think it's important. What a lot of people don't realize is around 1 billion people
Mm-hmm.
around the globe live with a disability. That's 15%, approximately 15% of the world's population. And this is data from from World Health Organization. That means that 1 in 7 people has some sort of disability. And that also means the people that visit your website, visit your app, are using your product, probably one in seven fits that box. And that is things like being visually impaired or deaf, people who are neurodivergent, but also people who are in a way older. So there's a generational gap in terms of digital
Hmm.
accessibility, non-native speakers. And so there's a whole long list that, yeah, if you are not one of those people, it's probably not something you think about on a day-to-day basis, but these could be your following in your clientele or maybe in your potential clientele. So even more the reason to also include them in your digital marketing.
That's really interesting because I think that's, at least from my experience, I think the first proper eye-opening experience I had with this was an event that potentially we were both at in the Netherlands had a toffee stand where you had to order with Dutch Sign Language,
Yeah.
which I actually grew up. My mum taught me a slight small amount of English Sign Language, but you move to another country, it's the language barrier, and it was such an eye-opening experience because I'd never, and I felt a little bit ashamed. I'd never thought of this, but I think that's the whole point of what you guys are doing. It's not hidden. It's just it's not maybe normalized when it comes into marketing that this is also what you need to be thinking about, right?
Yeah, and maybe it's not hidden, but it's probably not as visible in
Mm-hmm.
your personal bubble at that moment because if you've never never met somebody who is deaf, so you need to learn some sign language, for example, or you've never met somebody who is visually heavy impaired, so almost blind, then yeah, you think, oh, this font looks amazing, or this color combination looks
Yeah,
amazing, but somebody who can't actually see it or only sees like 5 or 10% has such a hard time, but could be, your best next new customer. So that's why we challenge people to pop their bubbles sometimes a bit and look beyond what you know.
I love the idea of popping that bubble because I think there's so much, whether you're on LinkedIn or other sites, there's always this push for continue to educate yourself in whatever field you're in, but it can kind of stop a little bit maybe with just a professionalism. You know, if you work in this
Yeah.
field, you do this to get to the next step. When in reality, it's like, yes, pop your bubble, let in knowledge from everywhere, and assume that you don't know everything, and that's okay.
And that is, I think, a very powerful thing, what you said. Assume you don't know everything because that's where you find the ability to develop and to grow
Mm-hmm.
again. And that's beneficial for everybody, but mainly also for yourself.
Absolutely. To go back to just kind of what you said as we tangented slightly, language and readability, because you mentioned that a couple of times, especially with websites.
Hmm.
What sort of things do you mean by that? What should marketers, digital marketers, even kind of C levels be looking out for on websites, especially with redesigns? You know, maybe they're looking for something else and it's not even on their radar.
Yeah, really good. So something that we see quite often is that either the tone of voice is very, very formal,
Mm-hmm.
and that could be alienating younger people, or also found out by studies that neurodivergent audiences also see too formal of a language use as a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, if we only look at the language only, is sometimes very playful or very metaphorical could work very well in your industry, but you're alienating people who don't have those who have cognitive disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's like a nice acronym or a fun pun, but if that's only something that really works maybe in your generation or in your field, you're missing out on people who think, oh, they don't get it. Or
What
um,
the F is that? What are you talking about?
exactly. And especially nowadays where you have such a short time spent to grab people's attention that
Mm-hmm.
if somebody thinks this is not for me, they will, swipe left and never find you again. So even more reason to also consider who is in our target audience and are we trying to speak at least sort of the same language like them.
Mm-hmm.
I think also something with too much text is something that you need to be mindful of. But things are like overcomplicated user journeys, no translations, or simplified text can also be things to watch out for. We found out as well that there's quite a huge group of people who have lower literacy,
Hmm.
And these people also use the internet, right? So don't always think like I need to use these heavy formal words, because sometimes simplifying it increases your client reach.
Absolutely. And I think with what you've just said as well, like it's, I guess, in an international environment, which I'm going to assume, generalize, that the majority of businesses these days are operating or want to operate internationally.
Hmm.
Then you've got language barriers, like you said earlier, with idioms, with little inside jokes, with generational jokes.
Yeah,
And it's something that, again, it sounds so obvious when you say it. It does. Like, it's like, oh, of course, but I wouldn't. I have thought about it sometimes, and that's because I was in the DEI industry, but generally I wouldn't have, because
yeah.
I'm thinking of this is our target audience who are A, B, C, D, E. And from what you're saying, we should also be looking the other side of the alphabet. Like let's work backwards and include it.
Yeah, or at least sometimes do that little check-in moment with somebody who is outside of your own team. As it could be as easy as you're somebody who is in the C level or in the director level, who's maybe not in your direct clientele, but could be within the target audience and is from a different generation, for example. Just do a little check, but like, hey, what do you think of this copy, or what do you think of this image, or what do you think of this? um, and also listen to the feedback, because if two or three people say like, I don't get the joke, or I don't get this combination of words, it should be a little bit of a flag going up of maybe reconsider, trying something else, or at least testing it a bit more, and not just assuming because you think it's funny or it's very actual or accurate that everybody
Mm-hmm.
thinks that.
And I think that comes back to the keeping like an open mind with it, which is obviously a very big part of DEI. Itself is
Yes.
being open minded and willing to learn, whether you fit into, let's say, the DEI bubble or not. It goes both ways. Something you kind of mentioned earlier that I would actually really love to dig into, because it overlaps into so many different areas of marketing, is the color contrast. You mentioned this earlier, like kind of colors and design choices. So
Yeah.
let's dig into that. Like, why is that a little bit of a focus for, I'm not saying it's the only focus, but like a focus for you guys?
Well, it is a focus because we see that a lot of times marketeers, and we work a lot with marketing teams. Um, they are very heavily trained on being on trend and making something that sticks out. But something that a lot of times is forgotten is it inclusive? Are we making something that is accessible for everybody, or for at least as many people as possible? So what we see a lot of times that people miss out on is things like the contrast, so that they put very light letters on a white background. They create very cool fonts, but it's pretty difficult to read, or it doesn't really line out on all the devices the same way, so that people who use older devices can't really,
Mm-hmm.
use it the right way. Very flashing in animations, for example, something we see that's like a trend thing. All of a sudden, everybody is using GIFs again, or carousels, but there's no pause option on the carousel. So somebody who reads a little bit slower has not the option to read the full
Mm,
thing.
yeah.
Um, so these are already some things that are popping up in my mind. I think another one which is a very easy one is the size of the font. So we always advise to use at least a size 16, because
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah, not in your emails per se, but in your in most of the marketing
Hmm.
outing that you make,
Yeah.
uh try to use 16 at least, because a lot of people who have trouble reading it or seeing it will also eliminate you if it's playful small. Then half of the context or the copy doesn't come across. So it's a little check for yourself, and also test it. There's so many cool tools now where you can test what works better. Is it 14, 16, 18? Where do people stick around longer? So that's always a little bit of an advice if people are like, no, but 16 is too big, because we get that feedback sometimes. Is
Really? That's
is
the
to
one that people kind of fight back on a little bit and they're like, no, it's too big.
it's too big, but also the color thing. People, because it's a it's also sometimes personal preference.
Mm.
But yeah, we sometimes also forget that we are knee deep as a marketer. You are knee deep in a project, and then
Yeah.
you're playing around with these colors, and you want to be new and fresh, and it needs to feel in a certain way. It needs to be in the tone of voice and in the communication style of, whatever your company working for. And then you finally found sort of that loophole of this works, but that doesn't mean again it works for everybody. So yeah, try to use the right contrast. And there's even a really nice tool. It's called WebAIM Contrast Checker.
Hmm.
I will share it with you, so maybe we can put it in the show notes.
Absolutely. I can
It's
pop it
a
in
free
underneath.
link, and you can always, just check, and it gives you advice on how to adjust it with very small adjustments, but then increases the ratio of people that can also enjoy the type of copy that you're making and the content that you're making.
And I love that because it's not this huge kind of process you have to go to get everything checked by 15 people. It's just tweak it. Like that's it. You don't even have to fully, I'm going to say educate yourself on the exact psychology of why this works and why it doesn't. It's
Exactly.
be aware of it. And here's a little cheat sheet for it. We don't want to
Oh,
waste your
that's funny. I
time with
also
it.
use the word cheat sheet always, but it
Oh,
is.
really?
Yeah, you don't have to
It is, yeah.
reinvent the wheel, and there are really cool tools out there. There's also people that know a lot about this. So also, one of my advices for marketeers is always try to find some new role models. When I was saying the pop your bubble in the beginning, is
Mm.
also when it comes to the people that you follow that inspire you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't only go for the obvious ones that probably everybody follows, but maybe follow a marketeer that is somebody who has a disability themselves, or who makes different types of content, especially to include other people, because they come up even with better tips and tricks, and also create beautiful things. So, if you follow people outside of your own bubble, that's also a really great opportunity to learn and grow.
So with this in mind, because I think that's great advice. Have you ever come across marketers at different, let's say, generational levels who are a bit against moving into the DEI space or being more aware of it? How would you recommend that marketers kind of then not just, I don't want to say justify what they're doing or why they're saying it, but like what advice would you give if they're coming up against someone who's quite resistant to this sort of change or why it
So
should happen?
yeah, so the resistance is, I think, very common,
Mm-hmm.
and that's normal, because you're basically telling somebody that they have to do their job differently, and somebody who
Mm.
who is a senior most of the time primarily don't like hearing you need to do something differently, because why am I the senior then, right? So
Yeah.
again, it takes that first step of open mind, of we're never done learning and we're never done growing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's always good to just ask questions. So not point fingers and say like, "Hey, listen, we're not doing this right," or "You're not doing this right." But suggestions always help. So
Mm-hmm.
something like, "Well, what if we try adding captions to this video or these kinds of videos from now on?" And then somebody can ask back like, "Oh, but why should we do that? Because there maybe there's a reason why they don't use captions.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should, like, from a default, always should caption all of your reels and your TikToks and your stories."
Just put the captions
Um,
on there. Just have it as part of the process.
I think
Just
that
do
should
it.
be sort of a default, but I know at a lot of companies it still is not, because they
Yeah,
think, well,
absolutely.
somebody is speaking the native language, and all of our audience is in the native language. So, why the
Yeah.
caption? And it's not just for the people that can't literally not hear it, but also a lot of people look at it on mute. So if you can't, lip read or lip sync, then you need captions as well. So it's not only because of that,
True. It's for the
but
people who are sneakily watching the videos when they should be doing something else at work.
I'm doing that as well sometimes, right?
I
Let's be
mean,
honest.
we all are. If you work in the marketing, anything to do with the marketing space, I think it's at some point, especially on LinkedIn, someone's like, oh yeah, I'm on LinkedIn for work right now, and you're on a video and you've got it on silent because yeah, I don't need the trending sound playing, but absolutely, like I'm reading what's on screen. I want to know
Yeah.
why it's there.
So that is a good one to use. Another one is maybe challenge somebody in a friendly way. So always be friendly when you do these things. But a question that I use a lot of times is, I know quite a lot of people that use a screen reader. Do you think the whatever we're creating at the moment is accessible to somebody who uses a screen reader? And then, just wait. Give them a pause, because that's when they have to think of, oh, wait, that is something I didn't think about, right? So you're not pointing the finger of you're doing something wrong, but it's more you're challenging to, a peer or a leader or maybe somebody who is a bit more resistant to this, to think beyond that bubble that we were talking about. And
Yeah, it's a challenge to get better.
exactly. And finally, data always helps. So we always say data proves, but stories move. So if you
I love
open with
that.
like an interesting statistic of, did you know that 1 in 5 people in the EU have some form of disability? That means 20%, also 20% of our company, but also 20% of our audience. So with that in mind, are we thinking about these people when we are creating something new? And then again, just pause and wait for that person that you're trying to convince or take along to respond. Because most of the time, it's not that they don't want to; it's more that they never had to think about it that much. And there's even an official word for it. It's called perceptual blindness. So
Wow. Okay.
if you haven't lived it, it's very difficult to think about how it is for somebody in that position. So if you've never been blind, if you've never been deaf, if you've never been neurodivergent, you don't know what it's like, obviously, and that's perceptual blindness.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think with that, then I have a maybe a slightly on trend question for you. Obviously, at the moment, and you will have just gone through it with your company, is there's Pride Month, either June or July. I know with a few countries it switches slightly or overlaps into August a little bit. What's your take on companies doing Pride Month? Big corporations, small businesses. What's your perception of this? Do you recommend that companies do this? Do you recommend if they do it, if they do something else? What would you say there? Because I think it's something that when it comes to kind of awareness and everything else and accessibility, it's a big topic that kind of gets brushed aside after the summer's over. And yeah, I'd love to know what you think.
I love that question. Thanks. So officially, June is Global Pride Month, but you are right.
Okay, good to know.
For example, in Amsterdam, we celebrate Pride always the first weekend. So the last week of July and the first week of August, and then
Yeah.
there's the candle parade and all these parties happening. So there's not an official rule. The only official one is that June is International Pride Month, but somewhere around the summertime is when most countries and companies spend time and attention on this. But you also need to consider that people are not queer only 1 month a year or 2 days
Shockingly. Wow.
in the
Oh my
weekend
God.
in August, right?
Yeah.
If you're queer, you're always queer. So it's a little bit of that discussion that I love to have with companies on why do we only spend time and attention on it once a year then when people are queer all year round? Does it mean you have to have the pride flag out all year? But on the other hand, why not? If you say this is something that connects to our values, this is something that we stand for, we want to be a safe place, we support the community. Are you actually supporting the community? That's a good one. Like, where are the receipts? Are you supporting any
Absolutely.
charities? Do you have an employee resource group internally? Do you have good representation of queer people in the company and not just the people in the operations, but also do they have leadership roles or are they subject matter experts or all of these questions I love to ask. And if they don't know, if the answer is no, then the rainbow flag or the rainbow logo can also just, be tucked away because then it's pinkwashing.
Yes.
Yeah. And you have to be very mindful of that because that means you're taking advantage of already a minority community to gain whatever followers, clients, or something out of that, and that can backfire very heavily in your face. So please be mindful to not just stick a Pride logo on things and think that because of that the company becomes more inclusive.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, that can go into any area of accessibility as well, I suppose, with DEI. But have you yourself worked with companies, not asking you to name names, who you've gone in and gone, you're pinkwashing, or maybe there are other forms of this, you know, pinkwashing, purple washing, anything like that. Have you gone in and gone, you need to stop this, or you need to make these changes so you can carry on doing it? One of the two.
Oh yeah, it happens
Mm-hmm.
honestly still regularly, and it's not that companies have the wrong intention behind it, that they think let's pinkwash on purpose. A lot of times they think they're doing a great job by for example, one of our current big clients is a hospitality client, and they came knocking at our door over a year ago, I think a year and a half ago, because they wanted to participate in Pride. That was their ask.
Oh,
They
wow.
said,
Okay.
here in Amsterdam we have the big candle parade. If you've never been, highly recommend, because it's one of the
Second
best
that.
best events
Best
ever.
thing I've been to. And I think I did 10 years of it straight. It was amazing.
Yeah, so but a lot of people have never been there. So you can also go if you are not queer, but you are an ally, you're supporting the community. But it's also just an amazing event. It's 80 different boats from different institutes, from corporate institutes to governments and private companies that have huge decorated boats. And the boats are filled with happy dancing people who are celebrating freedom, because that's what Pride is about. And in order to participate, you need to go through quite a heavy selection process. You need to pay quite a lot of money. And now the restrictions become heavier and heavier, also because of the pinkwashing.
Yeah.
So the company that I was referring to, they knocked on our door. They said, we want to participate in Pride. Can you help us? We want the best, coolest boat that has ever existed. And we said, okay, let's talk. And then after the first conversation, we already found out they don't do anything besides this wish of participating in Pride. So they didn't
Okay.
have anything for the queer community internally. And so our advice was, before you do something so big and externally visible, please try, and we want to help you with that, get your stuff together inside.
Build from the
Yeah.
foundation.
1 second. We need to cut this out.
That's fine. Don't worry. This can be edited out.
Oh, for all the talking, you get a dry throat, right?
Tell me about it. It's why I have water here next to me all the time.
Mm,
Don't worry. This is
Okay.
super easy. We'll just drop this out. So one sec. So to build from the foundations up.
yeah. So start focusing on the inside first. What are we doing? Are we including the right people? Are we getting feedback from the right people? And not just using it as a display to almost showcase that you are doing something, but you are not really doing that much. And we also saw that with Black Lives Matter a couple of years ago, when a lot of companies also jumped on it almost as a trend, that a lot of companies were sharing this black square on Instagram, or companies posted of, we are supportive of the black community, and then you had to just pick up one little sheet and do a little digging, and or ask a couple of employees who are people of color of, is that true? What are they actually doing? And then the tumbleweed came by, because nothing. They
Yeah,
said
absolutely.
the board is white. I've never heard anybody say anything about supporting black communities or doing something for black people. Only that now they want to jump on this because they say it's horrible what happened, and that's not enough. It's good to say it's horrible what happened, but don't say we stand with the community and with us it's a safe place. So
Yeah.
yes, it's sometimes difficult. It's a thin line, so you also don't always have to figure it out yourself. There's really good people and companies that have more expertise in this. So also don't be hesitant, just to reach out and ask for help.
And I think that's a big takeaway. So I think you've been great sharing a couple of like tips and tricks as we've gone through, but what would like your go-to recommendations be for marketeers going forward at any level? You know, this should be entry, but also up to C-level. What would you recommend?
Okay, so how many can I have?
As many as you would like.
Okay, I'll try to keep it
Everyone
short.
grab a
Okay,
coffee and trail up. Get ready for the list.
take notes now. I'll try to keep it short because I always get excited because there are so many things that people can do that are not, super difficult or very expensive. So first, the WebAM contrast checker, I think it should be in
Mhm.
every marketeer's overview. Same as you have your ChatGPT open, this should be next to it. So promise to share that link.
Perfect.
Caption your socials, please. Caption it. I know more and more platforms are doing it automatically, so also use
Mhm.
that to your advantage. And if it's not, check it as well. But yeah, this is going to be the future and even more. So not just for the people who are reading it on mute, also for the people that actually can't hear the amazing content that you have been making. So caption it. I would say include and test content that you're making with people who experience the world a bit differently. And what I mean with that is, again, if you made something that you think is super cool and very flashy, and you show it to somebody who is on the neurodivergent spectrum, so these are
Mhm.
people who have ADHD or autism or a form of Asperger's or even dyslexia, it's all part of neurodiversity. Test it with them and ask like, hey, what do you think of this? And give me
Mhm.
honest feedback because they
Yeah.
will, and learn from the feedback. If more people say like, oh, this is too much, or this is very flashy, I don't like the flashes because it distracts me from the actual content that you're trying to make, or there's so many moving parts in this design that it's hard to focus. So try to include people that are outside of your bubble, and you will get a lot of good feedback. And you will learn and you will grow from that as well. So I think I'm going to keep it with those.
I think those are brilliant ones because from what you're saying, it's you don't need to be an expert. And if you'll allow me, it's kind of like just take a step forward. You know, a small change to make a big difference, and it doesn't have to be that you change everything at once.
Yeah, and a good one for especially the people who need to convince a budget holder or a leader.
Mhm.
You could also frame it as, yes, it's inclusion, but it's also reach. And in marketing, it's all about reach, right? Because
That is so true.
if we make it more accessible, more people will look at it or listen to it, so we get more engagement. So
And
yeah,
that's
that's
like you said, that's marketing. We want to reach the people in every way. Well,
exactly. So
thank you
yeah.
so much for coming on the podcast. As I suspected, the time absolutely flew by. So, is there anything last you would like to say, or?
No, I think I want to end with yeah, I think motivating and challenging people to look beyond, ask for help. There's amazing, probably brilliant people already in your own environment. If it's within your friend group, in your family, or within the company, just dare to post something and be like, hey, I would love to get feedback from somebody who, has maybe poor eyesight or has hearing challenges, because we
Mhm.
wanna hear your feedback as well. And also look back after that on maybe missed opportunities because you forgot to include people, because then in the future it becomes a normal thing. It's almost like training
Yes.
for a marathon, or if you're training for something else. It's a consistent thing. So the more often you do it, the more normal it becomes, and the better your results are going to get. So just have fun with it and don't be afraid to ask for help.
I love that. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, everyone. This has been Masters of Marketing with Sasha Martina as our guest. And tune in soon for the next episode. Thank you so much, Sasha.
Thank you.